There are moments, just before a storm arrives, when the birds in your yard begin to disappear. Not after the rain starts, not after the thunder, before any of it. One moment the feeder is crowded, a cardinal balancing carefully on the edge of the tray, sparrows moving through the grass beneath it, a dove standing perfectly still near the fence line. And then, something changes. The movement slows, the sounds fade. The yard that felt alive only seconds ago suddenly feels suspended. You look at the sky, still bright, still calm. Nothing seems wrong. But the birds already know. Most people assume birds simply react faster than humans, that they hear thunder earlier, or see dark clouds farther away. But what researchers have discovered is much stranger than that. The birds around your home are detecting changes in the atmosphere long before your brain recognizes that anything is happening at all. Pressure, wind, vibration, tiny electrical changes moving through the air ahead of storms still miles away. To humans, the atmosphere feels empty. To birds, it is full of information. And tonight, we are going into that hidden world, into how birds know storms are coming, where they go when the sky turns dangerous, and what may be happening in your yard during the moments you think nothing is there. Stay with me until the end, because the final thing we cover explains why entire flocks sometimes vanish from the sky before severe weather arrives, and where they go instead is something most people never imagine. Number 1. The silence before the storm. You know this moment. Almost everyone does. The yard suddenly feels different somehow. Not dangerous exactly, just wrong. The feeder empties. Birdsong stops. Even the trees seem quieter. For a few strange minutes, your yard feels less like a living place and more like a photograph. Most people think this silence happens because birds are hiding from rain. But the silence often begins long before the storm itself arrives. Researchers studying songbirds have found that many species respond to microscopic shifts in barometric pressure hours before severe weather appears, especially small birds. A chickadee weighs less than half an ounce. Its entire body is extraordinarily sensitive to atmospheric change. Pressure moving through the air. Low-frequency vibrations carried across long distances. Wind patterns humans never consciously notice. To a bird, the atmosphere is not background. It is a constant stream of survival information. And as storms approach, birds begin changing their behavior almost immediately. Feeding becomes faster. Movements become more direct. Calls become shorter and less frequent. Then suddenly, they disappear. Not randomly, deliberately. The dense evergreen at the corner of your yard. The thick shrub near the fence. The hollow cavity inside the old oak tree you barely pay attention to anymore. That is where they go. Because surviving a storm is not mainly about avoiding rain. It is about avoiding exposure. Wind, cold, flying debris. A small bird caught in violent weather loses body heat at an alarming speed. So before the storm reaches your neighborhood, the birds move into protected spaces where the air becomes calmer and the temperature more stable. Hidden pockets of survival. Places you walk past every day without realizing a living creature may be inside, waiting for the sky to pass overhead. And the unsettling part is this. By the time your yard feels silent to you, the birds have already been preparing for danger for quite a while. Number 2. What birds do during the storm itself. Most people imagine birds simply waiting out storms somewhere in the trees. Wet, cold, holding onto branches until morning. But for many birds, surviving severe weather is a far more precise and dangerous process than that. Especially at night. Because nighttime storms create a problem most humans never think about. Darkness removes visibility. Rain destroys insulation. And wind strips heat from a bird's body faster than that bird can replace it. For a small bird, Survival during a cold storm becomes an energy equation. And the margin for error is almost unbelievably small. A chickadee weighs roughly as much as 2/4. That tiny body burns energy constantly just to remain warm enough to stay alive. During severe weather, conserving heat becomes more important than movement itself. So many birds do something remarkable. They partially shut themselves down. Researchers studying winter survival in small songbirds discovered that species like chickadees can deliberately lower their body temperature during dangerous cold conditions. Their metabolism slows dramatically. Their heart rate drops. Breathing becomes shallow and controlled. From the outside, the bird can appear almost motionless, hidden deep inside a cavity while rain and wind move overhead. This state is called regulated hypothermia, and without it, many small birds would simply not survive until morning. Think about that for a moment. While you are inside your house listening to rain against the windows, there may be a bird in your yard reducing its own body temperature just enough to stay alive through the night. A living creature the size of your hand, balancing survival with astonishing physiological precision. And where that bird chooses to shelter matters enormously. Dense evergreen shrubs become wind barriers. Old woodpecker holes become insulated chambers. Nest boxes trap tiny pockets of warmth created by the birds themselves. Researchers have documented bluebirds crowding tightly together inside nesting cavities during severe weather. Sometimes more than a dozen birds packed into a single small space. Birds that, during the day, defend territory aggressively, pressed silently against one another simply to survive the cold. The rules of daytime disappear during storms. Survival changes everything. And there is something strangely moving about that. Because the shrubs, trees, and hidden cavities in your yard are not just landscape anymore. To the birds around your home, they are emergency shelters. Life support systems, places that determine which birds greet the morning and which do not. The storm passes overhead. Rain falls through the darkness. Your yard looks empty, but hidden inside those quiet spaces, life is holding on with extraordinary determination. Number 3. The birds that remain awake while they sleep. A stormy yard at midnight looks empty to humans. Dark. Still, silent except for the wind moving through the trees. But it is not empty at all. Hidden inside dense shrubs, tree cavities, and tangled branches, the birds in your yard are still awake in ways most people never realize. Because a sleeping bird is never fully unconscious. Cannot afford to be. A bird that sleeps too deeply may not wake fast enough to survive. So many species evolved something extraordinary. They sleep with half their brain awake. Literally. Researchers call this unihemispheric slow-wave sleep. One hemisphere of the brain rests, while the other remains alert. One eye closes, the other stays open, monitoring, listening, ready to react instantly if something changes in the dark. Cornell researchers first documented this clearly in waterfowl resting in groups. Birds positioned on the outer edge of the flock kept the outward-facing eye open while the safer birds in the center slept more deeply. Awareness was distributed across the group. Someone was always watching. And the same thing is happening much closer to you than most people understand. The cardinal hidden inside your cedar hedge tonight may not be fully asleep. The chickadee inside the oak cavity may still be monitoring vibrations through the bark. The dove resting silently near your fence line may react within fractions of a second if a predator moves through the yard. Even in darkness, the birds are listening. The scrape of a branch, the sound of wings nearby, the low movement of something approaching through wet leaves. To humans, nighttime feels empty because our senses weaken in the dark. For birds, nighttime becomes a different kind of awareness entirely. And storms make that awareness even sharper. Because rain masks sound. Wind hides movement. Predators become harder to detect. So while thunder moves overhead, the birds in your yard exist in a state somewhere between sleep and vigilance, resting, but never fully letting go of the world around them. There is something deeply unsettling about realizing that. The yard you look at through your window at 2 in the morning, the one that seems lifeless and still, may actually be filled with small living creatures silently monitoring the darkness around them, watching, listening, waiting for the first safe moment to return to the open air. And you would never know they were there at all. Number 4. The birds flying above your house during the storm. This is the part most people never fully understand. Even while storms move across your neighborhood, there may still be birds high above your roof traveling through the darkness, migrating, navigating, crossing entire states while most humans are asleep. And when severe weather appears in their path, what happens next is extraordinary. Because migrating birds do not simply wander through the sky randomly. They are constantly reading the atmosphere around them. Wind direction, pressure gradients, humidity, temperature shifts, even subtle changes in Earth's magnetic field. To a migrating bird, the night sky is not empty space. It is a moving landscape full of information. Twice every year, during spring and fall migration, billions of birds move across North America almost entirely at night. Warblers, thrushes, orioles, tanagers, birds you know only as tiny flashes of color at your feeder in May. At certain points in migration season, the sky above a single state can contain millions of birds in one night, and storms reshape all of it. Researchers using weather radar discovered something astonishing. Before major storm systems arrive, enormous waves of migrating birds often descend out of the sky simultaneously. Not dozens, not hundreds, millions. Entire migration streams changing altitude or landing at once ahead of dangerous weather. Birdcast, Cornell's migration tracking system, regularly captures these events on radar. What appears at first to be massive weather movement across the screen is sometimes biological movement instead. Living rivers crossing the continent through darkness. And then suddenly, the atmosphere shifts, pressure changes, wind destabilizes, a storm forms hundreds of miles ahead, and the sky reacts. Imagine what that means for a moment. While you are asleep inside your home, there are birds above your neighborhood navigating invisible highways through the night sky with a precision humans still do not fully understand. Some of them weigh less than an ounce. Yet they cross oceans. They survive lightning storms. They adjust course in darkness using stars and magnetic information your senses cannot detect at all. The hummingbird that arrives at your feeder in spring may have crossed the Gulf of Mexico in a single overnight flight. The wood thrush singing in your trees during summer may have traveled from Central America almost entirely at night. And during storms, many of those birds are making life or death decisions in real time above your house, which changes the way you see the night sky completely. Because what looks empty to you may actually be full of movement, full of navigation, full of invisible life flowing silently overhead through the dark. The storm passes. Slowly, the rain weakens against the roof. The wind that bent the trees an hour ago becomes softer now, more distant, and somewhere in the darkness outside, the birds begin waiting for morning. This is the moment most people never notice, the transition back, because the yard does not suddenly become alive again all at once. It returns in pieces. A single movement deep inside the hedge. The quiet sound of water falling from branches. Then somewhere before sunrise, one bird calls. Just one. A robin. Cardinal. Sometimes a chickadee. And almost immediately, the silence begins breaking apart. The hidden world starts becoming visible again. Birds emerge from the evergreen where they disappeared hours earlier. Doves step carefully back into the open yard. A feeder that looked abandoned during the storm slowly fills with life again, as though nothing unusual happened at all. But now you understand something most people never fully see. The birds never vanished. They were here the entire time, inside tree cavities, inside dense shrubs, pressed silently against branches while rain and wind moved above them. Somewhere overhead, migrating birds altered course through darkness you could not see. All night long, your yard remained full of awareness, movement, and survival, even when it appeared completely empty. And there is something strangely humbling about that realization, because humans experience storms as interruptions. But for birds, storms are simply part of existence. A world they have been surviving in for millions of years with bodies so small and fragile they almost seem impossible against weather that powerful. And yet morning comes, and they are still here. The cardinal returns to the feeder. The dove settles beneath the maple tree again. The chickadee moves branch to branch as if the night never happened. But it did happen. You just were not able to see most of it. And maybe that is the strangest part of all. How much life exists around us every single night, completely hidden until someone teaches us where to look. The next time your yard suddenly goes silent before a storm arrives, pay attention, because the birds already are. Before I go, tell me something in the comments. Have you ever noticed birds behaving strangely before severe weather, or seen your yard become suddenly quiet right before a storm? I read every one. I'll see you in the next one.